The first thing I noticed about Arden House was that it had no sound of its own. Not the real kind, the gravel crunching beneath tires, the fountain whirring the air, the low mechanical purr of gates sealing behind me. Those were ordinary sounds, obedient sounds. The house itself made a different kind of noise. One only I seemed able to hear. It answered in faint metallic shivers that slid along my skin and settled behind my eyes like cold rain. Lies. My foster father used to joke when he caught me staring at broken radios or old
watches.
The world is full of them. You just happened to hear the screws loosening. I was 10 when lightning hit the boathouse and split the weather vane in half. After that, whenever people lied close to glass, silver, water, or steel, I heard echoes. Not words exactly. More like the truest sentence. In the room, spoken under the tongue of whatever had been said out loud. I learned early not to mention it. Small towns forgive oddness only if it can mend. Clocks, patch nets, or quiet babies with fever. My oddness did none of those things on purpose, though it had saved me from a few dangerous promises. The driver opened the car door and said, "Miss
Quinn, we have arrived."
The chrome handle whispered, "He hopes I do not vomit on the marble. He thinks country girls all get carsick." I stepped out anyway. Arden House rose from the cliff above Greywater Bay like a sheet of winter. Sunlight folded into angles, glass walls, pale,
stone.
Too much confidence. You could have fit my entire foster family's repair shop into the front hall and still had room for the piano and 2 of the statues. Glaring down from the landing, at the top of the staircase stood a woman in cream silk with one hand resting lightly on the banister as if she had posed there for years in preparation for this exact second. Celeste Arden, my mother. I had her mouth, according to the lab report, and her eyes, according to every article that appeared after. The DNA results leaked. The headlines preferred romantic phrases. Lost. Daughter found. Blood returns home.
Fortune. Rights old wrong.
None of them mentioned what my foster brother Finn had said when I told him I was going. They are not sending a car because they missed you, Mara. They are sending a car because they need something only you can sign. Celeste descended the stairs with elegant caution, not because she was weak, but because she understood observation. Even the silk at her wrists moved as if it had been taught manners. "Mara," she said. The chandelier over us whispered through its crystals, "She has practiced your name all afternoon and still is not sure she deserves to say it." "Mrs. Arden," I replied automatically. A flicker crossed her face. Not pain.
Not
exactly.
Something more disciplined than pain. Tucked behind the eyes and strangled before it could breathe. "You do not need to call me that." The mirrored console table at my elbow breathed. "She hates that this all happened in public, hates him more for it,
hates herself most."
She reached for my suitcase. I held on too long. Neither of us let go gracefully. "You have had a long trip," she said. "We will get you settled. There are some things we should discuss before dinner. House expectations mostly." The silver clasp on her watch clicked against the marble and told me she thinks rules are safer than tenderness. She only knows how to offer structure when she wants to offer love. That made something in my chest pull tight in a direction I did not trust. "All right." She led me across the entry hall. My boots left faint traces of road dust on the polished floor. 2 housemaids glanced down at them and away again. A footman took my coat, a painting of a dead Ancaster with a fox under his arm, watched me as if I had shown up late to a trial. "Arden House is busy this week," Celeste said. "The foundation gala is Saturday. There will be guests, press, board members. I would prefer that you not wander into private meetings. If the staff offer help, accept it. If there are matters you do not understand, ask before reacting. And at the table, please do not feel you need to." She stopped there. "To what?" "Eat too quickly, hold the wrong fork." Admit I knew what a shell company was, but not how to wear shoes that cost more than Rowan Quinn's rent. The brass frame of a family portrait whispered, "She is terrified. You will think she is ashamed of you." I took pity on both of us. "I can learn," I said. Celeste's shoulders softened by a fraction. "Good." Then, because I was tired and because fatigue loosened the cruel humor I normally kept on a short leash, I thought, very vividly, beautiful woman, impossible house, perfect
posture.
No wonder my father never bothered to age. Honestly, he had to keep up. Celeste stopped
walking.
She looked at me, not through me, at
me.
A stillness ran through the hall so cleanly it felt cut with glass.
"What?" I asked.
"Nothing." Her voice was too quick. The pearl earring at her left ear answered where she would not. She heard something.
Impossible.
She heard something. I stared back. Impossible or not. Color had drained from her face, then footsteps sounded from the far corridor. Several sets, and the moment broke. A young woman in powder blue came first. The picture of well-bred urgency. She was lovely in a translucent way, the kind of beauty that looked as though it had been designed to make other people protect it. Seraphine Arden, according to the papers. Seraphine Cross, according to the sealed DNA. Report. Victor Arden's a Fairchild inserted into Celeste's nursery 23 years ago, while the real baby was sent away under forged records. And a paid nurse's silence. Not all truths come from my echoes. Some come from envelopes with legal stamps and enough zeros behind the word settlement to make. Newspapers salivate, Mara, Seraphine said, breathless and soft. I have wanted to meet you properly for so long. The polished railing under my fingers whispered. She practiced that line in the mirror. She means, I need to know how dangerous you are. Behind her came my brothers. Adrian, the elder, dark-haired and severe in a charcoal suit, with the exhausted precision of a man who had been living inside hospital corridors and boardrooms too long to tell them apart. Luca, younger by 4 years, all sharp grin and insolent shoulders, his tie half undone already. He looked like he might laugh at his own funeral. If the organist missed a note, last of all walked Victor Arden. The man did not enter rooms. He acquired them. He carried his expensive age the way other men carried a watch. Chain with deliberate display, silver at the temples, smile sharpened by practice,
Warm hands.
Warm lies.
Every article
ever written about him called him dynamic. Every photograph showed him leaning toward someone poorer. The steel hinge inside the nearest glass door began to hum so loudly I tasted pennies. He says family now because contract later.
He
Says miracle now because signature later.
He
Says daughter now because liquidity later.
I
Should have felt triumph. Finn had been right. I should have felt righteous and hard. Instead, I only felt tired. Victor opened his arms.
There.
She is. I did not move. After half a second too long, he turned the gesture into a paternal touch on my shoulder. Welcome home. The crystal bowl on the table. Between us hissed, he is already calculating how little sincerity he can spend to buy your compliance. Seraphine slipped closer to me, hands clasped. Eyes bright with curated feeling. I know this is difficult. If my staying here makes anything more painful, I can leave for a while. Really? I never wanted you to feel replaced. Her bracelet, a thin lattice of white gold, sang against itself. You will cry in exactly 14 seconds if no one stops you. Adrian must not look too long at Mara's face. Luca already suspects. Victor promised the proxy. Before the gala. Proxy. There it was.
Not even.
The house had waited until dinner. I smiled at Seraphine in a way Rowan Quinn once told me looked too gentle to be safe. That is generous. Her eyes sharpened. Victor clapped. Once, as if summoning a better script. We have all had a shock, but we are going to manage this with dignity. Celeste perhaps show Mara her room. Then tonight we can discuss practical matters. Practical matters. The phrase settled in my stomach like a stone. Finn needed surgery in 6 weeks. The estimate from St. Bartholomew's still lived folded in my coat pocket, soft at the edges from being read too often. I had come for answers, yes, for anger maybe, but also for that number. At the foot of the stairs, Luca tilted his head at me and said, if you plan to set the place on fire, give me 10 minutes warning. There are at least 3 rooms worth saving. The zipper on his leather satchel whispered, he prefers bluntness to pity. He does not know which side you are on, neither do you. I almost liked him for that. Almost. My room used to belong to a child who had never learned what dust was. I knew that because there was
None in.
not on the shelves, not on the carved bed frame, not on the windowsill where a regiment of porcelain swans kept formation over the bay. Someone had maintained this space for years, without knowing whether its owner existed.
That
Should have felt like devotion. It felt closer to penance. A housemaid named Inez brought tea and 2 dresses for options, though there was no universe in which a woman with her expression believed I could choose correctly unaided. Mrs. Arden said to tell you, dinner is at 8, she said. The tray whispered through its silver handles. She has seen girls arrive here with less and leave with nothing. She is deciding whether you will survive.
Thank you.
Inez's gaze drifted to the frayed cuff of my shirt before returning to my face. There was
No cruelty in it.
only measurement. Professionals always know the weight of a room. Faster than blood does. When she left, I opened the wardrobe and found silk, cashmere, linen, colors arranged by season. At the bottom sat a box with a note in Celeste's precise hand. In case nothing fits, we can have
More scent.
no signature, no sentiment. But the paper beneath my fingertips murmured. She went herself. She rejected 6 boxes before choosing this one. She remembered the size from the report and hated herself for only knowing that much. I sat on the edge of the bed and laughed once without humor. There were 2 ways to survive families like this. The first was to let yourself believe. Every almost kindness meant more than it did. The second was to disbelieve everything, including the pieces that might save you. I had spent my life practicing the second because it hurt less in installments. Still, when I pulled open the top drawer of the bureau and found a photograph tucked beneath the velvet lining, the careful distance inside me slipped. It was old enough that the colors had gone soft. Celeste on the estate lawn, younger and brighter-eyed, holding 2 little boys by the
Hand.
Beside her stood a stroller draped in
Lace.
no baby visible. Only a tiny knitted blanket with blue rabbits on the edge. On the back in faded ink, someone had written, for all my children under one sky. The brass knob chilled under my thumb.
Not.
Celeste's hand, grandmother's, she suspected. She left doors open where she could. I slid the photograph into my pocket before I could think better of it. At dinner, the table could have seated 14 without anyone. Touching elbows, only 6 places were laid. Victor at the head, Celeste opposite. Adrian on Victor's right, pale but composed, a stack of folders beside his plate as if he had come from a meeting rather than his own home. Luca slouched near the end with the artistic gloom of a boy who had discovered boredom and mistaken it for philosophy. Seraphine sat between my brothers in moon-colored silk, carefully breakable. I took the remaining chair. The first course appeared. With military timing, chilled fennel soup, tiny seared scallops, bread that looked like sculpture. I ate more quickly than I meant to. Travel stripped etiquette down to hunger. Across from me, Celeste said gently, "There is no need to rush," the water glass at her hand.
Whispered, she is not judging.
She is remembering court-ordered interview notes. Describing you as food insecure until age 12. I set my spoon down. Victor dabbed at his mouth with a napkin. "Mara, I understand your foster family runs a repair business in Greyfen. Boat engines. Clocks, radios, locks, whatever pays," I said. "Versatile." The silver salt seller spat. "Rustic. Useful. Cheap." Victor smiled. "And your brother, Finn, is it? I heard there are medical concerns." There it was, not even halfway through the first meal. My fork sang sharply against the china. He had me investigated before the car left the city. "He is my foster brother," I said. "And yes." Celeste looked up at Victor so. Quickly the candles trembled.
You said you
"Would not." "I said we would be direct," Victor replied.
This is direct.
Seraphine touched Victor's sleeve. "Maybe not tonight," her ring answered. Before he could say it now, before Mara bonds with any of them, before Adrian grows a conscience in public, before Celeste regains one in private. Adrian's knife paused above his plate. "If this is about the trust, it can wait." Victor's voice cooled by degrees. "It concerns the entire family, including you." Luca leaned back, studying the ceiling.
Excellent.
"Nothing improves digestion like legal coercion?" "Manners," Celeste said automatically. Luca
Snorted.
"You invited the law to supper, Mother. Manners already left." Victor ignored him. He folded his hands and fixed me with the expression newspapers loved because it photographed as concern and read as ownership. "My mother established a preservation trust years ago. Certain voting rights were set aside for her direct line. When you were identified, those rights became
Yours?
Adrian added quietly. "In theory," Victor's cufflink glinted. "In practice, she signs and we solved this before the auditors arrive." I said nothing. Victor continued. "The trust controls a block of land along the eastern marsh. There is a redevelopment proposal. Underway harbor expansion, flood barriers, shipping access, public jobs. The board vote is this weekend. Because of the trust clause, we need your proxy attached before then."
Need, Luca repeated.
Such a sweet little word. Victor shot him a look. "This project will support hundreds of local
Families?
The stainless wine cooler whispered. "From its stand, it will bury a deficit, hide a transfer, and move the liability before winter storm. Season." My stomach went cold. Greyfen sat east of the marsh. Finn's operation estimate flashed in my mind like a number carved into glass.
What is
"The proxy worth?" I asked. No one moved. Then Seraphine made the softest wounded sound, as if I had slapped her with arithmetic. "Mara." I held up a hand. "I did not ask you." The room tightened. Victor recovered first. "We can arrange substantial support for your brother's treatment. A housing stipend. Education funding if you want it. A formal position within the foundation once things
settle?
I would prefer to think of it not as a transaction, but as family helping family."
The
Silver lid on the bread dish hissed. "Bribe. Bribe." Celeste closed her eyes briefly. Adrian looked at me then, properly, for the first time all evening. His gaze was not unkind. It was worse. It was ashamed. "Has anyone shown you the environmental report?" he asked Victor. "We are not discussing internal documents at the table because you buried the revised one." Seraphine's spoon hit her bowl. "Please do not fight because of me." Her spoon whispered against the porcelain. "If Adrian speaks tonight, Victor will cut him off from the clinic board and he knows it." So Adrian was already in the war, whether he wanted me there or not. Luca broke a piece of bread and said, "If we are telling stories, let us go all in."
father says barrier?
Activists say dredging. Investors say emergency. Timeline. Contractors say impossible by winter. Pick your genre, Mara. I looked at Victor. What happens to the marsh villages if the barrier fails? The question landed like a dropped glass. Victor's smile thinned. "It won't fail." The carafe near him answered. He has never read the final soil report.
I
Turned to Adrian instead. He set down his knife. The East Marsh absorbs storm surge for 3 coastal towns, including Greyfen. If the dredge wall goes in the way the current plan proposes, the surge has nowhere to bleed off. You would get stronger inland flooding within 2 seasons. Maybe 1? Celeste inhaled sharply. "Adrian,
what?
we all know why grandmother protected that land." Victor's hand came down flat on the
Table.
The crystal trembled. "We are not litigating strategy in front of guests." The chandelier overhead answered. "He loses temper first when the facts stop obeying." I said, "I'm not a guest." For some reason, that silenced everyone. The second course arrived and was sent away untouched. After dinner, Victor asked me to join him in the study. The room smelled like cedar, expensive paper, and a life spent signing things that turned into buildings other people could not afford. Shelves rose to the ceiling. A globe stood beside the fireplace. On the desk waited a leather folder with a gold clasp. Victor did not sit behind the desk. He came around it, a detail so calculated it made my teeth ache.
I know this is overwhelming.
The bronze pen stand told the truth. He knows this is leverage. I do not need comfort from you, I said.
Fair.
Enough. He offered a rueful smile. But perhaps clarity then. Your foster family will always matter to you. I respect that. If they need support, I can provide it.
Not
Because I expect gratitude, but because it is long overdue. The glass paperweight on the desk whispered. He practiced this in the mirror. How long have you known where I was, Victor's? Gaze flickered only once.
We confirmed.
Recently.
Liar.
The paperweight chilled so fast my fingers tingled. He had your school records 2 years ago.
He
Waited for the trust deadline.
Victor sighed as
If I had disappointed him by noticing, there were legal complications. Meaning,
what? Meaning a public admission would have?
caused instability in the company. The
Foundation.
family already looks unstable. For the first time, irritation. Slipped the leash. Watch yourself. I stepped closer instead.
Or what?
The silence between us hardened. Then, Victor changed tactics, which only confirmed the first had failed. This proxy does not harm you. It secures everyone, including the people in Grayfen.
Once.
The expansion is approved. Values rise. Opportunities increase. Your brother gets the best surgeon's money can buy. You get freedom from scrimping and repairing broken things for the rest of your life. The desk lamp hummed. He thinks poverty is a moral injury and wealth a
Cure.
I had spent half my childhood taking apart clocks with Rowan Quinn, learning how patience could turn useless metal into accuracy. I had spent the other half helping Finn sand hulls, inventory bolts, and make soup when Elsie was too tired to stand. Scrimping was not romance. It was hard and humiliating and relentless. But the way Victor said broken things made it sound as though every object I had ever loved was something to be ashamed of. What if I want to keep repairing them? I asked. He stared. Then, very softly, Victor said, You are my daughter. The steel nib inside his pen shrilled. You are my asset. I laughed in his face. That ended the
Conversation.
He handed me the folder anyway, and told me to review it before breakfast. I took it because refusing would have been drama, and I preferred information. When I reached the corridor, Adrian was there waiting, jacket off. TD loosened, one hand braced against the wall. He looked worse up close. A faint tremor in the fingers, shadows under the eyes, sweat cooling at the hairline. You all right? I asked. Fine. The silver pill case in his palm screamed, not fine. I took the case from him before he could object. This dosage label is
Wrong.
He frowned. No, it has been adjusted twice this month.
The
Aluminum cap vibrated against my skin. Tampered. Capsules swapped. Not fatal. Debilitating.
I
Looked up sharply. Who gave these to you? Adrian's expression
shuddered.
My assistant brought them up from the kitchen. Office. Don't take them.
Mara. I'm serious.
For a second, we stood in the corridor like strangers holding different ends of the same wire. Then he surprised me by asking, How do you...
No. I glanced toward the study door.
Victor's voice murmured faintly within, already. On a call.
Numbers. Deadlines.
A man's idea of prayer. I hear things, I said. Adrian's tired mouth almost smiled. That much. I have gathered. He pocketed the case instead of swallowing a capsule. It was not trust. Not yet. But it was enough for one night. When I turned away, he said, The East Marsh report is in the archive room, basement level. Locked.
I
Looked back. The corner of his mouth moved.
You said you repair locks.
Then he went upstairs before I could thank him. By midnight, the house had gone.
Still?
I sat on the floor of my room with Victor's folder open in front of me and read every line. Twice. The proxy was dressed in the language of temporary delegation, emergency efficiency, discretionary stewardship, market timing. Buried. On page 11, under a stack of legal snow sat the blade. Once transferred, my voting rights could be exercised irrevocably for the duration of the development program and any related asset conversion structures. Any related asset conversion structures. I did. Not need an echo to know poison when I saw it.
I
Thought of Finn sleeping above the repair shop, one hand curled against his chest the way he did. After bad episodes, I thought of Rowan teaching me to listen to what metal did under strain. I thought of Grayfen, under storm water. Then I slid the proxy back into its folder, put on my boots, and went hunting for the basement. Arden House kept its secrets below ground. The service stairwell was narrow and painted the practical shade of white chosen by people who expected staff, not family, to use it. The lower I went, the louder the building became, pipes ticking, ductwork flexing, electrical wires carrying insomnia from floor to floor. Houses talk most honestly when they're polished. Rooms are asleep. At the basement landing, a steel door blocked the corridor. Archive. said the brushed plaque. The lock was digital, but badly installed. Whoever maintained the electronics believed technology meant invincibility. Technology usually means someone got careless in a more expensive font. I crouched, slipped a thin tension strip from my braid, and listened. The lock whispered numbers through its tiny motor after less than a minute. Not the code, exactly. The rhythm of the owner's habits. Press. Hesitation. Overused digits. Sequence wait. When the bolt clicked open, a voice behind me said, I knew it. I turned so fast, I nearly drove the hairpin into Luca Arden's throat. He leaned against the wall in a faded band shirt and expensive socks, carrying a half-empty bowl of cereal like an accessory to delinquency.
Easy, he said.
I came unarmed, the ceramic bowl in his hands.
Answered. He has been here before.
He wants in. 2. Do you make a habit of stalking people in basements? Only the interesting ones.
He
Tipped his chin at the door. You going to invite me, or do I have to pretend? I am scandalized. I should have sent him away. Instead, I pushed the door open. The archive room smelled of paper, cold metal, shelving, and old climate control. Rows of labeled boxes reached into the dark. Foundation,
records,
property deeds, audit correspondence, estate inventories. One locked cabinet at the back newer than the rest, with fresh brass screws and a keypad box that looked installed by a man who trusted secrecy. Less than brute force. Luca shut the door behind us. Adrian told you. Only that you all have terrible instincts and worse architecture. He grinned. That'll fit on our family crest. We moved between shelves reading labels by the light of our phones. What do you want? I asked. Luca pushed aside a stack marked Gala Donors. Tonight, something criminal enough to be useful, but boring enough not to traumatize me. His humor was loose, but the metal zipper on his pocket whispered. He saw the protest footage. He knows Father's Wall will kill Grayfen, and half the marsh birds with it. So that was his angle.
You care about the marsh.
I care about not living in a mausoleum built on public
relations.
He pulled out a file and snorted, and some of my friends happened to prefer coastlines that still exist. There was more. There is almost always more with boys who hide. Sincerity under jokes, the spoon he had tucked absent-mindedly into his cereal bowl sang against the ceramic. Nia got arrested at the first dredge blockade. Father made one call and called it mercy. She stopped taking mine after that.
Nia then.
Not philosophy.
Heartbreak. I found the newer cabinet interesting for another reason.
The
brass keypad felt hot under my fingertips. Inside, it whispered. The nurse, the settlement, the paternity report, the tape.
Help me with this.
Luca set the cereal down and crouched beside me. Can you really open anything? No. Just most things made by men with egos. He laughed once, then went quiet as I worked. This lock had been changed recently and badly. In under 2 minutes, the keypad gave up, pretending to be difficult. Inside the cabinet sat 5 slim boxes, 2 flash drives, a sealed evidence bag, and an old cassette tape in a case labeled E. Private. I took the tape first. Luca lifted the evidence bag to the light. Inside lay a tiny hospital bracelet yellowed with age. Baby. Girl Arden. It read in cracked ink. Beneath it rested a second bracelet.
Baby S.
Cross. Jesus, he whispered. One of the flash. Alt ACQ. The other. VC transfers. He looked at me. We take all of it. The shelf bracket above us clicked nervously. Cameras and corridor only. 5 minutes before patrol.
Yes.
We were halfway to the door when the archive room lights snapped on. Seraphine stood in the doorway, wearing a dressing gown the color of moonlight and fury. For a second, no one moved. Then she saw the evidence bag in Luca's hand and all softness vanished from her face like paint washed off in acid rain. So it is true, she said.
You are not stupid at all.
Luca straightened.
Moo.
Seraphine smiled without warmth.
You think I have not spent my whole life moving when
your family told me to. Do you know what it costs to be grateful for a theft you did not commit but benefited from? Anyway, the chain at her throat trembled.
She
has the nurse's second voicemail in her room. Victor does not know. She planned to use it if he ever cut her loose. I do not care what speech you have prepared, I said. Get out of the way. Her eyes found mine. You should. You more than anyone. Then, to my surprise, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her.
If you expose this now, he will bury all
of us. Her voice was very level. The board will call me a fraud. The press will call me a parasite. Your mother will destroy me in public and then probably herself in private. And Victor will turn every one of us into collateral. You do not know what he can do when cornered. Luca's bowl made a small startled sound on the floor where he had abandoned it. He believes her. I believed her too, inconveniently. Then help us, I said. Seraphine laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Help you after spending 23 years learning the exact smile that keeps this house from swallowing. Girls, like me whole, you arrived yesterday and already. Celeste looks at you like absolution. Adrian gives you files. Luca tells you things. Do you know what I get? A lifetime of being useful enough not to discard. You are Victor's daughter, Luca said, flatly. Not ours. The words hit harder than a slap. Seraphine's hands curled. Do you think I do not know that? The silver clasp on her robe whispered. She wants someone To say she did not choose the beginning. No, she chose much of the rest. I took a breath. If you have something else, say it now. For one flashing second I thought she might. Instead, she looked at the cassette in my hand and made her choice. She lunged. Luca caught her around the waist before she reached me, but not before the cassette flew from my grip and cracked against a filing cabinet. I swore and dropped to the floor, gathering the spools as tape uncoiled like brown ribbon at a funeral. Seraphine thrashed against Luca. You do not understand. He will never let any of us leave clean. Join the club, Luca grunted. I stuffed the damaged cassette into my jacket. The shell was broken, but the tape looked salvageable if I got to it fast. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Seraphine heard them, too. Her body went still. Let me go, she hissed. Right now, Luca. If they find us like this, Victor wins in under a minute. He hesitated. The door handle twitched. I made the decision. For him, let her go. Luca released her just as a security guard entered, blinking at 3 underdressed members of the Arden family in a locked archive room after midnight. Seraphine put a hand to her throat and mastered her breathing in one terrifying instant. I heard something downstairs, she said, voice fragile. I was frightened. The guard turned to me and Luca, to his credit, did not miss a beat. And naturally you assumed Mara was robbing the family silver. Seraphine looked at the guard with wide eyes. I thought perhaps she was lost. The guard's radio whispered, don't get involved. Rich people breed accusations like mold. He cleared his throat. Perhaps everyone should return upstairs. I tucked the evidence bag and flash drives inside my coat and said, excellent idea. Seraphine's gaze cut to the bulge in my pocket. Sharp as wire. She knew what I had. More importantly, she knew. I knew she had more. When we reached the main corridor, she touched my wrist lightly enough for the cameras to read sisterly concern. In the morning, she murmured, the orangery. Come alone, if you care about your little town. Then she drifted away. Luca exhaled hard. Well, that felt healthy. I looked at the broken cassette shell in my hand. Do you know anyone who still owns a tape player? His grin returned. Smaller this time and real enough to trust a little. I am the youngest disappointment in a very wealthy family, Mara. Of course I know a man. By 1:30 we were in an unused rehearsal room above the garage, where Luca kept old amps, forbidden records, and enough vintage audio equipment to revive several extinct decades. He patched together a machine from 2 surviving decks and 3 curses. The tape had stretched, but not snapped. When Grandmother Eleanor Arden's voice filled the room, every hair on my arms rose. If this is being played, she said, either I'm dead or my son has become exactly the man I raised him not to be. Luca sat down hard on a speaker case. The recording was dated 11 years earlier. Eleanor's voice did not shake once. I have reason to believe the child presented to the family as my granddaughter, Seraphine Arden, is not Celeste's daughter. Before anyone accuses grief or age, I have placed duplicate materials in legal custody. Victor believes loyalty can be purchased. He has never understood how often it can be rented elsewhere. Nurse Lenora Pike took his money once. She took mine later. The bracelets are genuine. So is the paternity test. If the lost child is found, she must not be pressured into ceding the Eastern Trust. That land is the only clean thing my husband ever put in writing, and I will not have it traded for my son's. Dups. Luca covered his mouth. The tape crackled. Then Eleanor added, softer, almost tired, Celeste. If you're hearing this, I am sorry. You deserved truth earlier than I was brave enough to give it. To the child who should have had my name from the start, if you have your Quinn mother's stubbornness, you will not forgive easily. Keep that. It may save your life. The tape clicked off. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Luca said, Grandmother always did know how to leave an exit wound. I sank onto the floor. The truth should have felt clarifying. Instead, it arrived in layers. Victor had engineered the switch. Grandmother knew. Celeste maybe did not. Not fully. The trust had been built as a shield, not a prize. And my life in Grayfen, the repair shop, the cramped bedrooms, Finn's laughter, Rowan's hands smelling of oil and tea, had not begun with accident. It had begun with someone deciding I was easier to misplace than an estate clause. What now? Luca asked. I held up the flash drive labeled VC transfers. Now we find out how crooked your father's numbers are. He looked at the other one. And sure, I would guess shell companies tied to the wall project. Cheerful. We were 3 hours into spreadsheets when Adrian knocked once and entered without waiting. He looked from the tape deck to the open files on the monitor and did not bother pretending surprise. You found it, he said. Your family hides things in absurdly obvious places, Luca replied. Adrian's gaze landed on the evidence bag and turned flat with anger. I suspected had nowhere gentle to go. He kept it in the house. I expected him to defend someone. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves, sat beside us, and began reading transfer ledgers with the grim focus of a surgeon. By dawn, we had enough to ruin several lives. Victor had moved foundation funds through 3 consulting entities tied to harbor acquisition. One of them traced back to a holding company in Seraphine's name, another to an insurance intermediary that profited if the Eastern Marsh was rezoned as compromised land after storm damage. The timeline lined up with dredging, tests, false maintenance reports, and buyout. Letters quietly prepared for Greyfen and the neighboring villages. There was also a page of medical payments routed through a private clinic that made Adrian go very still. That is my cardiologist, he said. Luca looked over his shoulder. The one who kept changing your meds, Adrian nodded once. Or someone on his payroll. The room sharpened around that truth. You think? Father made you sick on purpose, Luca asked. No. Adrian's mouth hardened. I think he needed me tired, uncertain, easy to overrule. That is close enough. The amp at Luca's back hummed. He will never call it betrayal if he can help. Calling it strategy? As the first pale strip of morning opened above the bay, my phone buzzed. Finn. I answered on. The second ring. You should be asleep. He sounded winded. You should be less easy to find in tabloids. I stood. What is wrong? Nothing that can't wait 3 minutes while I tell you. Our front pier flooded. On a clear tide because some genius started test. Dredging upstream. Every muscle in my body locked. He kept talking. Rowan's already on the pilings. Elsie says not to panic. So of course, I am panicking professionally. Did your rich relatives decide to improve the coast to death? I looked at the marsh maps on the screen. At the shell company names. At Victor's project summary with its clean language and dirty math. I'm going to stop it, I said. Finn was quiet, which for him meant he was frightened enough to choose his words. Mara, don't trade yourself for me. I swallowed. I won't. When I ended the call, Adrian was watching my face. They have started. Preliminary dredging, he asked. I nodded. His answer came without hesitation. Then we move before the gala. Luca raised a hand. Counterpoint. The gala has every donor. Director, reporter, and parasite in one room. If we detonate there, Father can't smother the blast. He was right, and I hated him a little. For it, I slid the damaged cassette case into my pocket and stood up. Then we survive until Saturday, I said. And on Saturday, we burn the right rooms without touching the house. The next 2 days moved, like a knife being sharpened in another room. Florists filled Arden House with lilies. Caterers rehearsed routes. Victor performed calm. For donors, Celeste wore composure like armor. Adrian met lawyers. Luca vanished and returned smelling of solder. And rain. Seraphine smiled at everyone. That unnerved me most. I met her in the orangery the following morning, because refusing would only have moved the danger elsewhere. Glass walls and wet leaves held a controlled warmth. Seraphine sat beneath a lemon tree with tea, untouched in front of her. I brought something, she said, sliding a printed page. Across the iron table, Finn's surgical deposit. Deadline? He can still have the operation, she said. I can pay it today. I did not touch the paper. Why would you? Because if you expose Victor badly enough, he will try to bury everyone under the collapse. He has documents that make Celeste look unstable. He has allies who can freeze accounts. He has ways to drag your foster family into the investigation if the adoption records reopen. The table whispered true, not complete, but true. She had more. Another voicemail from the nurse Lenora Pite. Proof that Victor had sealed my records under a dead infant's file. A promise or a threat, depending on how you tilted it. Do you have the voicemail, I asked? Yes. Then give it to me. Seraphine's smile turned brittle. I was raised by people who collect leverage the way other families collect recipes. I know. Better. I leaned forward. Then tell me what you want. For once she answered honestly. I want this house to stop deciding whether I deserve to exist. When she left, I listened to the rain on the glass and accepted the ugliest part of the truth. If I set fire to Victor in public, the smoke would not ask permission before spreading. So I took the problem to Celeste. She listened. While I laid out the archive evidence, the shell companies, Adrian's contaminated pills, Finn's flooding pier, and Seraphine's warning. When I finished, Celeste opened the hidden lockbox behind the drinks cabinet and handed me a sealed legal packet. Inside were Grandmother Eleanor's emergency proxies, board contingencies, and one notarized letter restoring temporary control of the trust to Celeste if Victor attempted fraudulent transfer. He thought he destroyed the final filing. Celeste said he did not. The paper whispered she has been waiting for proof strong enough to justify becoming ruthless. Then she said something that almost hurt more than the evidence. I wanted your first public night here to be beautiful, not useful. Beautiful. It was too late for beauty. We both knew that, but it was not too late for accuracy. That afternoon, Adrian had his blood tested under a private name. The results confirmed contamination in the capsules he had been taking. Not enough to kill him. Enough to worsen his episodes and blur his judgment, while Victor publicly called him too fragile to oppose the harbor plan. Adrian set the report down and said, I kept thinking if I worked hard enough, I would become someone he did not need to manage. Luca, soldering an audiovisual bypass at the Grand Piano, because apparently tables were beneath.
Him said, "Good news."
You were always going to disappoint him. Saves you effort. We made the plan in pieces. Luca would reroute the ballroom projector through an old junction nobody used. Adrian would send packets to 3 board members. Grandmother trusted. Celeste would wait until Victor publicly invoked my signature, then produced the emergency proxies and fraud. Evidence. I would stand beside him, refuse to sign, and keep the room still long enough for the truth to be heard. The only uncertain piece was
Seraphine.
she answered that an hour before the gala. I was being pinned into a silver gray dress by 2 stylists when Seraphine entered my room, set a flash drive beside the jewelry case, and said Lenora's voicemail. And the insurer's private dredge schedule. When the stylists left, I asked, why now? She looked at the gowns, the pearls, the mirror full of a life that had never truly belonged to either of us. Because he poisoned the coast, she said.
He
poisoned Adrian. He would have let all of us drown if the balance sheet improved, and because I'm tired of being useful to men who call that love, she turned to leave. If this works, I said, you still lose the life you had. She paused at the door. At this point, she said I would settle for keeping the part of me that can still be ashamed. The gala opened in gold. Cars lined the drive. Donors glittered. Reporters smiled as if scandal were merely philanthropy with better lighting. The ballroom. Doors stood open to the dark bay.
violins.
Floated above the conversations. Waiters moved like choreography. Celeste wore midnight silk and old diamonds. Adrian looked steadier than he had in weeks. Luca looked almost respectable except for the expression of a man one compliment away from sabotage. Victor looked like victory already. Framed. He called me onto the stage at 8:30. This evening, he told the room, is about restoration. About welcoming my daughter Mara home to the family where she has always belonged.
The
Microphone stand hummed, lie. Applause rose, warm and foolish. Victor lifted the leather proxy folder. And because my mother believed in trust, not only as sentiment, but as structure, Mara has chosen to lend her voice to Arden's next chapter. He extended the pen. I took the microphone instead. No, I said.
the
Words sliced the ballroom open. Victor smiled. Harder. Mara, not here.
Actually, I said, here is.
Perfect. Across the room, Luca touched the hidden switch. The ballroom screen flashed white, then filled with Grandmother Eleanor's portrait. A second. Later, her recorded voice rolled over the guests. If this is being played, either I'm dead or my son has become exactly the man I raised him not to be. No one moved. Eleanor named the switched hospital bracelets. She named the paternity test. She named the Eastern Trust and warned against using it to cover Victor's debts. She apologized to Celeste. She left me a sentence that felt like inheritance more than any deed ever could. Keep your stubbornness. It may save your life.
The
Recording ended in perfect silence. Victor reached for grief as if it were a tie he could straighten. My mother was brilliant, he said, turning to the room, but in her later years, she became suspicious. No, Celeste said, joining us on stage. She became thorough. She held up the evidence bag. With the hospital bracelets inside, a shock went through the room. Then Adrian stepped up with the blood work report. And transfer ledgers. Then Luca with the insurer. Schedules and shell company trail. Last of all, Seraphine walked out from the side, curtain, and stood under the chandeliers with her face stripped of all softness.
My name is
Seraphine Cross, she said. Victor Arden is my biological father. He knew it. He let this family raise me as proof of a lie because it kept control where he wanted it. Someone in the front row gasped loud enough to qualify as theater. Seraphine continued, voice shaking only once.
I
Also held directorship interests in Shore. Alternate acquisition. I was told they were donor privacy and tax structures. They were not. I have turned over every communication in my possession. Victor stared at her as though betrayal were only shocking when it moved upward. Get off this stage, he said. No. That single word from her sounded like a door closing. Victor changed targets. He reached for me, perhaps to drag me away from the microphones. Perhaps because force was all he had left that felt familiar. Adrian stepped between us. For 1 second, father and son stood chest to chest beneath the chandeliers. Don't, Adrian said. Victor's face broke open at last. You ungrateful boy. I kept trying to become someone you would not need to manage, Adrian replied loud enough for the first rows and all the cameras. Turns out the easier solution was to become someone who could finally say no. Victor
shoved him.
The motion was ugly, real, and disastrous. Camera flashes went off in a storm. At the back of the ballroom, 3 board members rose simultaneously, each holding the legal packets Adrian had sent before the speech. One elderly trustee in emerald silk said one word with cold delight. Security. The terrace. Doors opened. Fraud investigators entered first. Tax enforcement behind them. For the first time that night, Victor looked ordinary. He turned to Celeste with disbelief, so naked it almost humanized him. You vindictive bitch, Celeste regarded him as if he were something damp found under a floorboard. No, she replied, just late. They took him out in full view of the guests. The quartet faltered to a stop. Conversations shattered into questions, phone calls, and the sound money makes when it changes loyalties.
I
Should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt emptied out. Celeste touched my arm. Say it now, she murmured, before they invent a cleaner version. So I took the microphone one last time. My name is Mara Quinn Arden. The Eastern Marsh Trust will not approve the harbor expansion.
the
Dredging work is suspended pending criminal and environmental review. Any buyout notices issued to Greywater communities will be revoked. Recovered funds will go first to shoreline repair and impacted towns. Several investors looked physically
ill. Good.
If you came tonight for a family reunion, story I added, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is a repair announcement. This time, the room listened. By midnight, the ballroom looked like the aftermath of a very expensive storm.
Seraphine.
Disappeared before the last reporters were ushered out. Luca claimed ignorance with suspicious satisfaction. Adrian went to the hospital to make sure Victor's shove had not triggered an episode. Celeste disappeared into the study with lawyers and trustees and the expression of a woman, finally remembering how power fits in her hands. I went to the East Terrace and called Finn. He answered with, "Please tell me you married a duke and secured excellent parking for my surgery." I laughed until my eyes stung. Then I told him enough, just the useful parts. Victor was finished. The trust was safe.
The
Coast would hold. The deposit would be covered through recovered funds, not through any bargain. With him, when I stopped talking, Finn said, "You sound like Rowan when an engine finally admits what is
wrong.
Is that good? It is noisy and expensive," he said. But yes, the rest took longer. Victor remained in custody on fraud, bribery, tax, evasion, and environmental conspiracy charges. The harbor contracts collapsed, the buyout notices to Grayfen and the neighboring villages were voided.
Emergency.
Shoreline reinforcement was funded before
Winter.
Finn's surgery succeeded. He sent me a photo from recovery wearing a paper crown someone had drawn fish skeletons on. Adrian resigned from 2 family companies and joined an environmental firm that considered him both useful and impossible. Luca released a furious song called East Marsh Mercy that embarrassed half the city and delighted the other half. Seraphine surfaced once through council to formalize her testimony and surrender the remaining documents. After that, she vanished so completely even the gossip columns had to invent endings for her. Celeste sold 2 properties, kept Arden House, and converted part of the foundation offices into a public records center. She asked whether I would move in permanently.
I
Told her no. Weeks later, she drove to Grayfen. Alone. Rowan offered tea. Elsie vanished, tactfully into the back room. Finn pretended not to stare at Celeste's shoes, which were expensive and completely unsuited to dock mud. Celeste and I sat outside the workshop on overturned crates while gulls argued above the harbor. "I do not know how to do this slowly," she said. "No one in this family does," I replied. She laughed. Then she watched Finn argue with a delivery driver and Rowan dismantle a radio and said, "I used to think elegance meant leaving no mark. Now I think that only means someone else had to clean up after you." The rusted anchor chain at our feet whispered, "She is trying."
not
Perfectly. Actually, I handed her a pair of work gloves. "If you are going to visit," I said, "you might as well learn how to strip wiring." She stared at the gloves as if I had offered her sainthood in canvas and rubber. Then she put them on. Life did not become simple. After that, it became work.
good.
Broken things prefer honesty to miracles. They want patience, clean tools, and enough light to see where the fracture truly begins. The world still talks to me through metal, glass, and water. Arden House still murmurs when I visit. So does the repair shop. So do the marsh pilings at high tide. Lies did not disappear because one family finally choked on them. But sometimes I hear something else.
Not absolution.
Nothing so dramatic. Just the quiet, solid click of a lock turning because, at last, the right key has been made.